you haven't found it yet, don't worry, keep looking. It's a small book. In the back there. All right, I'm going to attempt to do a really quick preview, or I guess look back at where we were. If you're here for the first time and you're catching the last one, I hope it's still profitable, but there's all sorts of stuff online, and there's just been some great lessons for me personally through here. I want to encourage you, if you've missed any of them, just to go and check it out. So Jonah was asked by God, he's one of God's prophets, he's asked by God to go to the city of Nineveh to tell them that their wickedness has come before him and he's going to destroy them. And Jonah, instead of, going to the city, he gets on a boat and he heads in the opposite direction. And we talked about how God could have picked a different prophet. There was other prophets that Jonah worked with, but instead he picked Jonah. He had something to teach him, and Jonah takes off in the wrong direction, and God throws this great wind down, and it ends up with Jonah being thrown overboard, and people on the boat turning to God. And this great fish swallows Jonah, and Jonah talks about his prayer in the fish and what he prayed and how he's just turned back to following God's way. He gets to Nineveh. The fish spits him out on dry land, and God says, "No, I want you to go to Nineveh." And so Jonah agrees this time. It's a good choice, and he heads over to Nineveh, and it's a huge city. We find out later, 120,000 people there. And Jonah says this message. Look at chapter 3, verse 4. Big city. He gets there, and so chapter 3, verse 4, Jonah began to go into the city, going a day's journey, and he cried out, "Yet 40 days, and Nineveh shall be overthrown." That was his message. It doesn't say he said anything else. Yet 40 days, and Nineveh shall be overthrown. It's game over. Look what verse 5 says. And the people of Nineveh believed God, and they called for a fast, and they put on sackcloth from the greatest of them to the least of them. Look at what the king does. Verse 6, the word reached the king of Nineveh, and he rose from his throne. He removed his robe. He covered himself with sackcloth. He sat in ashes. He issued a proclamation and published it through Nineveh by the decree of the king and his nobles, that either man or beast, herd or flock taste anything. Let them not feed or drink water, but let man and beast be covered with sackcloth. And they called out mightily to God. Let everyone turn from his evil way, from the violence that is in his hands. Who knows, maybe God will turn and relent from fierce anger, for his fierce anger, so that we may not perish. It's pretty unbelievable response. You imagine if you turned the news on and you saw our Prime Minister and our cabinet and the House of Commons weeping, sitting in ashes, covered in sackcloth, calling the whole country to turn away from our wickedness. It's pretty powerful. And the whole country, they're not allowed to eat. No one's eating. Even the animals aren't eating. This is how serious they are in calling it to God. Please, we want to turn from our wickedness and follow your way. And look what happens in verse 10. When God saw what they did and how they turned from their evil way, he relented of the disaster that he said he would do them. He didn't do it. Wow. Pretty powerful. Pretty simple message that Jonah took, and pretty amazing impact. An entire city, 120,000, we find out later, turned from their wickedness, king included, a mighty nation, this capital city of that nation of Assyria. They all turned from their wickedness, followed God's way. And the story, that's a pretty epic story, and it could have ended with chapter 3, but God includes chapter 4. And as I read chapter 4, I'm really encouraged by what's there, because I find out that Jonah was just another guy. We already kind of know that because he kind of ran away when God told him what to do. But there's some, as I'm reading through here, there's some just really key lessons, I think, for us this morning. And that's why the mayor's on the stage. Tim put that up weeks and weeks ago, because we don't want to just be able to tell other people the story. If you just leave here this morning saying, "Oh, that was good story," you kind of missed the boat. We want to see, what is it that I need to learn. And not just learn. I would say learn not just so that I know, but so that it actually impacts what I do on Wednesday this week and what I do on Thursday. Right? That's what we're shooting for. And so as we're going through here, I just want to start by praying and asking God to be teaching us. Each of us are in a different place. If you have the Spirit, I've been praying all week, the Spirit of God would continue to help you grow and show you where it is that you need to grow. God picked Jonah because he needed to teach Jonah. He loved Jonah dearly. He wanted to teach Jonah something. He's already taught him you can't run away from the presence of God, which is a pretty awesome truth. But he's still working on teaching him something else, and we're going to see that here. Let's pray this morning as we get into 4. God, I thank you that we can be here. I thank you that your love is intense for us, as we were reminded this morning, and that in our imperfection and in our immaturity, you still love us and you're still drawing us to yourself. You're still helping us grow up. And I pray this morning that this would be a part of that. You would keep helping us grow up, help us to see maybe where we think wrong, maybe where we've got off track, and that your Spirit would work in each of us where we're at, and will be reminding us this week and encouraging us, so we would experience new life abundant here. Pray in your name, amen. So you think Jonah's response, this is like a prophet's dream. He preaches a message, it only takes a couple days, and the entire city turns from their wicked way. Prophet's dream. If you didn't know the rest of the story, some of you know, you might say, wow, Jonah would be on cloud 9. We find out the exact opposite is true. So look at chapter 4, verse 1. Here's how Jonah responds to this. But it displeased Jonah exceedingly, and he was angry. And he prayed to the Lord and said, O Lord, is it not what I said yet when I was in my country? That's why I made haste to flee to Tarshish, for I knew that you are gracious God and merciful, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love, relenting from disaster. And therefore now, O Lord, please take my life from me, for it's better for me to die than to live. And the Lord said, do you do well to be angry? Not really the response I would expect, maybe not the response. It's the first time for you reading through this, you might be just kind of blown away that Jonah is really just ticked off. He's so ticked off he wants to die. Not like, what? Really, Jonah? Jonah actually tells us here why he ran. Look at verse 2. He says, this is not what I said when I was yet in my country. This is why I made haste to flee. Well, the other way. This is why I was heading for Tarshish, for I knew what he knows about God. He's bang on in these things. Look at this. He says, I knew that you are a gracious God, merciful, slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love, relenting from disaster. What Jonah knew about God in these ways is bang on. He's like, see, I don't know how you think about God, but he's not up there just real excited to bring about punishment and judgment on people. That's not who he is. That's actually the exact opposite of who he is. He's very patient, putting up with the wickedness he sees, hoping that people will turn to follow him in his way. And finally, when he can handle it no longer, he brings out his wrath and judgment. And he's not against anybody. He's for everybody. It actually says that he is willing that none should perish. He doesn't want one person to have to pay for their sin, to have to experience judgment. Not even one person. And Johnny read the verse this morning. For God so loved the world, the entire world, that he sent Jesus, his son, that anyone, doesn't matter the wickedness scale, anyone who believes in him will not perish but have everlasting life. And so Jonah's bang on. See, God's desire is to grant grace and grant mercy and to forgive and to not bring disaster. He is super patient. Jonah was bang on. This is who he is. He is a very loving God. Right? He's also a just God. And he's extremely patient. And I'm glad he just doesn't call it off. Doesn't say, someday he'll just say enough's enough and it'll be over. And he'll come back. Right? But I'm glad I don't have to make that choice, because essentially you're saying, okay, that's it. Nobody else in. Game over. But he hasn't called game over yet. Right? Because he wants every single person to turn to him. Isn't that pretty awesome? That's who I serve. A God who works through wickedness and can even use brutal things to bring people to him. A great God, a God of great love. And even though people continue to walk away, people continue to sin and hurt others, and great wickedness abounds, God's working and waiting and wanting to have a relationship with you, a relationship with people. And Jonah knows this. And Jonah says, that's why I didn't want to go. Right? That's why I didn't want to go, because I know who you are. It's just kind of confusing to me, and I thought about it for a couple of weeks, and I come up with 3 ideas about why Jonah was so mad he just wanted to die. And I could see myself in all 3 of these things. Try to make sense of this. Here's the first one. Jonah was a prophet. He was a man sent by God to bring a message of God to the people of Israel, his people. And Jonah, we only have one prophecy recorded that he gave. But if this was his full-time job, Jonah was giving prophecy messages from God all of the time to the people of Israel. Jonah likely had a huge heart for the people of Israel. And he loved them, and he was begging them to turn from their wicked ways and follow God. But the people of Israel were not turning from their wicked way. If you go and do a little bit of study on what was happening, there's some other prophets who were alive around this time, Amos and Hosea. And they got some horrible things to say to the nation of Israel. Guys, you have gone past beyond being able to turn back and follow God. And I'm going to bring another nation to come in as judgment, to turn your hearts back. And they're going to take you away for a while. And this nation that he says is going to come and do this, interestingly enough, is the nation of Assyria. And Nineveh is the capital city of Assyria. And Jonah knows this, right? He's like, I want my people to turn to you. I don't want to see destruction. And Jonah's given his life for this. And what's happening? People are not turning to follow God's way. It's the very opposite if you start reading about what's going on. And Jonah's heart is for his people. And God says, hey, Jonah, I want you to go down the road to the people who are going to come and I'm going to use to judge your nation. And I want you to share my message with them because your people aren't listening. I don't want to go. I want my people to believe. I want my people to turn. You came to us. The promises are to us. Don't send me. I'm not going there. We want your grace and mercy. And I think, is that not how we operate? Is that not natural? That we would naturally want the people closest to us to come to Jesus? Is that not natural? That we would most likely or be most concerned and pray most often for the people close to us, for our family, for our neighbors, for our community. Our hearts are really tied to those we love and those that are close to us, aren't they? And no doubt Jonah's heart was tied to his people. He had given his life to bring this message of turn to God. He is waiting. Jonah knows whose God is. Turn to him. He will not bring this destruction he's promised. Because he wants to show grace and mercy. But the people of Israel, they weren't having it. The king wasn't having it. And so as God wants to send him down the road, and he's like, I don't want to go down the road. This is what you called me to. These are my people. I've given my life for this. I'm not going somewhere else. Forget it. Maybe that's why Jonah was so upset. He has given his life for something, and he walks down the road, and because God works in the people of Nineveh, they instantly all turn to God. He's like, what's the deal? I've been preaching for years in my nation, and they're not turning. And then I just walk through and say, you guys are all going to be destroyed, and they all turn. You can see why he might be upset. Right? And he is upset. Here's another reason I thought of Jonah. See, a prophet was known by what he said. If it came true, then he was a true prophet. And Jonah might have thought, if I go over there and say you're going to be destroyed, and then you don't destroy them, that's going to discredit me as being a prophet. My reputation is going down the tubes. And I know you might do that. And so I don't want any of it. I'm not going that way. Right? Or what about this? I don't want to be the guy that was used to give those wicked heathen people a second chance. I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be the guy in Israel that you use to save our enemies. I don't want to be that guy. Right? Maybe that's it. Maybe Jonah was really concerned, as we often are, about his reputation. Right? About what people would think about him if he was the one to go to this place. And God was to use him to bring these people to follow him. Jonah, what did you say down the road? Because whatever it was, it worked. Maybe you should bring some of that back here. I don't know what the conversation was like when he got home to meet his fellow prophets, right? But is that not the case with us too sometimes? What keeps us from taking the message of Jesus to people is we're really, really concerned what people think about us. Right? We're really concerned about how we want people to perceive us or our reputation. And that really is a stumbling block for taking the message of God's grace and mercy to other people. Maybe that's why Jonah's worked. I think the most likely one, the one that we most commonly talk about is this. Jonah actually just didn't think that people were worthy of God's grace and mercy. They're way beyond you, God. They have done so many brutal, wicked things. They don't deserve your forgiveness. And Jonah's right. They don't deserve it. In the same way that Jonah didn't deserve it. Right? And I get that some of the things that we can do have greater impact on people than others. Some of the things we might do cause more trauma or are rated worse on the scale in our justice system. I get that. But every time we sin, it's against God. And every single one of us, Romans 3:23, has fallen short of the glory of God. Every single one of us has sin we've committed where we've said, no, God, you're not most important today, or in this choice, I'm going to pick me. I'm just going to do what I want. I'm most important. And often, in those actions have all kinds of consequences as they hurt ourselves and as they hurt other people. That's why God hates them so much. And these Ninevites did not deserve God's grace and mercy. That's why it's called grace and mercy. But in the same way that Jonah didn't deserve it. Right? And this gets me because I remember I was in high school. And in high school and in college, I just had this really bad attitude towards people who really were stuck in their sin. And I would look at them and say, why do you not just get a job? It's really not that complicated. If you want to work, there's work. Why would you make that choice that is so obviously not going to work out for you? Why would you put that in your body? Why would you talk like that? Are you kidding me? Or treat your spouse like that? And I had this attitude like these people were just unworthy of love. And the sad thing is, as I listen to a lot of you talk, I hear that. As you talk about your coworkers and the people at school, it's like, and your neighbors, these morons have, well, like it's like they're like, you can't even conceive why they would commit sin. I want to encourage you, as God's been teaching me, hey, we need to be mad, absolutely. We need to be ticked off at sin. But why would we expect someone who is a slave to sin to do anything but sin? Right? You see what I mean? Why would we expect somebody who is stuck in their sin, they do not have Jesus, they do not have the Spirit to do anything but sin. And somehow we're like, look down at our noses because their sin is different than ours, and we're like, you guys are unworthy of me sharing the gospel with you, and Jesus' payment on the cross can't cover that. Stop smoking up. Or sleeping around, or injecting yourself. Get a job. And we have this self-righteous attitude, like somehow we deserve the grace of God, and forgiveness of God, and Him opening our eyes and placing us in families where there actually was consistent love and care. And we look down at these people who didn't have that, who don't know Jesus, and expect something different than sin, which is ripping their lives apart and the lives around them. We call them morons and idiots. There is no place in a Christian's life. There is no place for that at all. Period. Okay? There is no place for that. Because the fact that I know how to manage my money and how to work has everything to do with what family God placed me in. I had nothing to do with that. I did not choose the family I was placed in. And the fact that I know how to ask for forgiveness and give forgiveness, to not be controlled by bitterness. It's not because I'm some special guy, it's because the Holy Spirit lives in me and helps me. And they don't have that. Okay? So I hate the sin that destroys them. Absolutely. And hate the way that it destroys the people around them. But don't hate them. Don't hate them. They need the message of the gospel. And they need help. And they need to see a new way, because what they're chasing is wrecking their life. That's what Jesus said. He said the Satan comes to steal and kill and destroy. But I've come to give you life with life abundant. There's just no business talking about wickedness. in the way that we look down on the people. Look down on the wickedness. God was real mad about the wickedness. But his heart was broken for the people who were stuck in that. Right? Maybe that's why Jonah's so mad here. I don't know. Let's carry on, all right? So here, God does a little in-life illustration for Jonah. So look at verse 5. So Jonah doesn't answer God. God asks him if he really should be angry. Jonah just leaves. So he goes out of the city, verse 5, and he sits down. He makes a booth for himself. He sits under it in the shade until he could see what's going to happen. Verse 6, now the Lord appointed a plan and made it come up over Jonah that it might be shade over his head and save him from his discomfort. So Jonah was exceedingly glad because of the plant. But when dawn came up the next day, he appointed a worm that attacked the plant so that it withered it. When the sun rose, God appointed a scorching east wind, and the sun beat on the head of Jonah so that he was faint. And he asked that he might die. He said, it's better for me to die than to live. But God said to Jonah, do you do well to be angry for the plant? He said, yeah, I do well to be angry enough to die. And the Lord said, you pity the plant for which you did not labor, you did not make it grow. That which came into being in a night, it perished in a night. And should I not pity Nineveh, a great city in which there are more than 120,000 persons who do not know their right hand from their left, and also much cattle? And then it just kind of ends. We don't really find out what happens with Jonah. Jonah, it's a super neat how God just does this in-life illustration to teach him. So he's sitting there. This is crazy. He's sitting there watching the city, just kind of hoping that it gets destroyed. Okay? And it's hot, Middle East, and so this plant comes up and it provides some shade. And Jonah's like, oh, I love this plant. This rocks, right? He's in the shade. And then what happens the next day? The plant dies and he's torqued. Right? He's like, I just want to die. This is ridiculous. God's trying to teach him something there. Here he is, sitting on the hill. When he could be down there helping these people understand how to follow God. They're just like ready to go. We're not living in wickedness anymore. And he's sitting up there just kind of watching what's going to happen, totally missing out. And he's really excited about what? This plant that provides him a whole lot of comfort. And what really gets Jonah ticked is when what is comfortable for him gets taken away. And it's like staring in the mirror at myself. Because when something gets given to me that makes me comfortable, I generally get fairly excited. Right? It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a motorbike. It could be some renovations. It could be a nice holiday or a trip. But when stuff that I enjoy that makes me comfortable gets taken away, ooh, look how bad we, right? And yet there's 120,000 people who are hungry. And Jonah has just totally missed what life is about. It's not about him and his comfort. It's about people and helping people. He's like, I might as well just die. Life's not worth anything anyways. I was coming. Right? And what's happened? Jonah's got his eyes off what God's called him to. And he's got to look at himself. Because you're not going to find meaningful, satisfying life in comfort. And I know that because Solomon had all the brains needed and all the money needed to try it all. And he says at the end of the day, it doesn't work. It doesn't matter what you're chasing. It's not going to fill that void that's there. I want you to look at this passage as we get ready to close. So Philippians, it's in the New Testament, chapter 1. I want you to see something because it's just a complete contrast to this. Alright, this is Paul talking as he writes to this church. And he says this. So go to 1 verse 21. I'll read a couple of verses here. He says this. Paul says, for me to live is Christ and to die is gain. If I am to live in the flesh, which means fruitful labor for me, Yet which I choose, I can't tell. I'm hard pressed between the two. My desire is to depart and be with Christ, for that's far better. But to remain in the flesh is more necessary on your account. And so convinced of this, I know that I will remain and continue with you for your progress and joy in the faith, so that in me you may have ample cause to glory in Christ Jesus because of my coming to you. Here's the complete opposite thing. Paul's like, man, I can't wait to die. I want to die. That's going to be awesome. I'm going to go and be with God. I just can't wait for that. And he's really looking forward to it. But then why does he say, I can't go yet? Why? Did anybody catch it? Why can't he go? Why is Paul saying, you know what, as good as it would be to go, I can't go yet? Anybody? For whose sake? Yeah, he's like, I gotta stay because there's people who need this message. There's people that need help. And so as much as I want to just go and enjoy life after death with God in this perfect place and enjoy all of that is, I gotta stay and I gotta slug it through because there's people around me who need what I have. Right? You see the total contrast? Jonah's like, oh my goodness, life is brutal, I'm out of here. And Paul's saying it's going to be great to be gone, but I got to stay because there's people around me who need what I got. See the contrast? When we get our eyes on ourselves and our own comfort, it's easy to think that there's really, what's really the point of just working and making money and spending it and doing it around and around and around? It's really not that much fun, is it? Right? He says there's something else to live for. There's something else to live for that's greater than your Cuba trip. It's greater than your retirement. It's greater than your project. There's something way better than that. And that's other people. That's what Paul's saying. I got to stay for other people's sake. So I got to stay. I met a guy for coffee this week, and I was so encouraged. This guy is an older gentleman who has so many physical ailments. It's crazy. You know what he has in his book? He's got a couple. He's always got these goals. I got these goals, and here's his goals. There's some physical goals, and then his goals are these three things. Love everyone, help everyone, and pray for everyone. That's his goals. Love everyone, help everyone, and pray for everyone. He says, I want to use every single day that I have left to do those things. He knows half of our city by name. What awesome things to live for. Things that will bring satisfaction. Things that will bring meaning to your life. Something worth giving your life for. See, there's a whole bunch of people who need the message you have. You don't have to do everybody at once. That's impossible. We're one at a time. We love everyone. We help everyone. We pray for everyone. Man, it's tough. I know it's a tough morning because we look in the mirror, what Jonah's going through, and it's like, I see myself. It's easy to get distracted in living for yourself, isn't it? Yeah, super easy. But you're not going to find joy there. You're going to find despair. You're going to find yourself sitting on the hill looking down your nose over people. And it's like a complete contradiction to the gospel. It's not just a message for you, it's a message for me. We're in this together, all right? One person at a time. Love everyone. Help everyone. Pray for everyone. That's what life's about. For the glory of God. All right, let's pray together to wrap up Jonah. God, I thank you that you include this. And we get to see one of your prophets who just was having a really bad week or a really bad season of life where his eyes have gone on to himself. He's become maybe self-righteous, more concerned about what people think about him. His desire to see other people that aren't part of this family come to know you are really kind of messed up. And I pray that you would use these things to teach us and encourage us. If we really started living for being comfortable instead of other people, I pray that you would show us that and you would help us to make changes this week, to turn back to your way instead of our own. We need your strength. Give us the strength and courage to do this. You had some awesome stories and experiences because of it. In your name we pray. All right. Thank you for coming this morning. I invite you to hang out, have some coffee, and enjoy one another. Love everybody. Help everybody. Pray for everybody. You're dismissed.
material.